Today we're looking at two 20-year-old Commodores, both similar but very different. One turbocharged, one supercharged. Let's take a closer look. So Jarrod, we first ran into you, what, 12 years ago at a dyno day?
Correct.
Where you cleaned up the competition, yeah? You made
wouldn't say cleaned up.
500 odd kilowatts back then was pretty good power
lucky.
out of
It was,
one of these.
especially on a roller dyno.
In essence, the car's still much the same, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Since then, yeah, it's just had a fresh rebuild, really. I sort of took the car off the road maybe 4 or 5 years ago, pre-COVID, just to give it a birthday. Bearings, that sort of thing. Fresh rings, but then ran into a few issues, hence off the road for that amount of time. So then also took that time to do little things. So that original dyno day, it was still internally wastegated, the turbos, like the rear housings, because they're still a GT30 76R, so not big at all, but obviously twins. So then I went to a T3 rear housing, external gate, Sal, Provision, did all the fabrication for me, did all the ceramic coating, and it was more about in that time period, you gotta remember, so the first build was 12 years ago, so now we're talking, call it 4 or 5 years ago that I did the rebuild technology. So turbocharger technology had advanced. Back then it was a cast wheel, so now I've gone to a billet wheel. That was done by ProCharge in Sunbury. Ben rebuilt them all, really, but essentially it's the same thing. It's still the same mid-mount kit, same intercooler, changed up the piping a little bit, but now it's, I wouldn't say it's on kill, but it was only about 15 PSI before. It's about 22 PSI now, making a fair bit of power for such a, it's still 5.7 litre.
Yeah.
It's nothing serious. Northvic did a fresh motor for me. Basic package, not expensive at all, rod, piston. It does have good heads on it, it's got mass cylinder heads, but a lot of people these days, they're going
still
straight
like cathedral style.
Correct, still cathedral, so it's what they call the 215cc LXR.
Yep.
So Mast went through a few rebranding stages, hence the LS2 intake manifold as well. I'm not really a fan of all those sort of big Holly aftermarket ones. In a car like this, they tend to lose torque in the mid-range just because the engine, especially a 5.7, the engine doesn't need that airflow. If you're revving the engine over 6,000 RPM all the time, 6.5, they make a bit more peak power. But what you lose through the middle, for me, especially in a manual car, turbo with a bit of lag.
That's where you drive it though.
That's where you're driving. So for me, it's about where do you want your power. So I don't really care for above 6,500 because I'm always between sort of 4 and 6.
Yes, exactly.
I've got mechanical sympathy, I don't really give the car a hard time. It's been off the road for so long now, I just want to enjoy it. You don't need a lot of fancy stuff to make power. It's the combination of everything. People just go massive cam, massive heads, and then wonder why it's got no mid-range torque, especially on a 5.7. Fair enough, 402 stroker, 408. You got the cubes behind you, no issues there.
Let's rewind back a bit. You said you've had this car a long time, haven't you?
2007 I bought it,
wow.
25,000 Ks, yeah. All original, I'm the second owner.
Was it stock when you got it?
Completely box stock. Yep, completely box stock. I've actually got photos with the timestamp on it that I show people, which is pretty cool. So now it's basically 107,000 Ks, I think. It was a daily when I very first bought it, but now obviously, yeah, just a weekender.
So let's touch on this car briefly. This was your car?
It was. So in that same time period, I just got bored and found this car, wanted another daily. So both cars, Series 2 VY SS, leather sunroof, factory. My car's factory manual, this car's factory auto. So when this was off the road, I bought that. Obviously going from a car with big power to a car with not as much power, you get bored.
The one thing I did notice when you drove it in, it's slightly different colour.
Correct, so this car has had unfortunately again, sitting in workshops for a long time, love marks on a lot of various panels, small marks, but love marks. So this has had a closed door respray in nitrate. So it's the HSV VF colour. So if you see it in the sun, it's a lot more metallic. Like this is probably more of a bluey silver, and that's definitely like a grey silver.
I see what you mean. So the long and the short of it was a bit too wild. So as you do, you've got to get a daily for the daily. Is that how this
pretty much
eventuated?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So I ended up finding an LSA blower, fairly cheap at the time. They're very expensive now. So basically did the conversion on this car. Still factory 5.7 litre stock bottom end, 98 fuel, 4L60, stock auto, stock converter, and that's still alive. My auto files are getting pretty good. We've got another car, Steve's VT, with the same setup, basically a stock LS1, LSA blower that made 400 or
So
the one with FR22.
let's touch on that. You do your own tuning, yeah?
Oh, yeah, correct.
Yes,
So ACCELGarage, that's Richard's workshop across the road. And we did the builds on both cars, but I do the dyno tuning.
Okay. And you mainly specialise in LS?
Yeah, definitely LS stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely the bread and butter is LS1 with factory controller.
Yeah, so both of these are still factory
ECU. Yep. It's got a lot of tables in there that you have to sort of manipulate, but the car can essentially drive like standard, even at these power levels.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because that's always going to be a concern in a big power manual. It's going to be
Correct.
too choppy and
No, well, this is a very small cam.
and-
It's a 222, 231 cam.
Yep.
So again, the power that it makes, considering 5.7, small turbos.
What power are you pushing out of this now?
So this car made 760 kilowatts at the hubs, which is about 1020
Yeah,
horsepower.
wow, okay.
A lot of that's got to do with the fact that it's a manual. If you put a turbo 400, rough numbers, it'll probably go around 680. But that's definitely not on kill. Like, yes, it's 22 PSI, but the engine's sort of 9.0 comp. It's very, very low comp.
Oh, yeah.
And the guys at Northbic have told me to send it, so if I want to go at 25 pound, it's really going to be the turbocharger.
How can you use it though, let's be honest?
You can't, but, well, currently you can't in a manual, but I am talking to Cale Anderson from Blackmagic Clutches in the US. I'm planning to get a slipper clutch. So for those of you who don't know, it's basically a stall converter for a manual. You can dial in a clutch where, for example, this car turbo, it's about 4,000 RPM full boost. You can get the clutch and it will slip to that desired RPM like a stall converter would. Centrifugal force locks up the clutch and then you'll take off. So essentially it removes the lag from a manual. But also, you know, I have raced this car only 2 or 3 times. The reason why, not a lot, because every time I've gone there I've broken something.
Yeah. Is it all still
Clutch. So the gearbox is a Magnum T56.
Oh, you got the good one.
I do have the good one, with the chromoly tail shaft as well. Still 2-piece, so I've got the centre bearing. It's not 1-piece. The diff is essentially standard, but it does have a true track. Still 346 gears, so you know, 100 Ks on the highway, 1750, 1800 RPM, just nice cruiser. Factory drive shafts, that's the main thing. But I've done that on purpose because of anything that breaks, I want it to be the cheapest and the easiest to swap out. That's just, you know, I'm an engineer by day, so that's the sort of stuff I take into account. Yeah.
And one thing about having a 6-speed gearbox, like we're toddling along at what, 1700?
Yeah, correct. So that's 5th. I mean, even I'll go 6th.
Oh, you're not even in 6th.
Showing off now. No, well now I'm in 6th, 75 Ks. You know, you can see the AFR gauge. We're sitting at around 14.2, 14.3 AFR. So it's not as if I've got a pig rich. But you know, we're literally 1300 RPM.
What's the difference between a standard T56 and the Magnum?
Basically stronger internals.
Yeah.
So they've got, and there's a few changes in like all the selector forks, so it's a much more direct feel. It's actually a lot more positive, so the shifts are very, very short. But it's not, you know how sometimes you get like the VT, VZ stuff, if they've been thrashed, the shift is very sort of loose. The only thing, if I was going to be picky, is that when it's cold, it is a bit notchy, but once it warms up, because all the tolerances are tighter as well. But they're supposed to handle like 700 foot-pounds. But again, these are all things that I did on purpose so that, you know, standard drive shaft, because that's what I want to break. You know, again, if it was turbo 400 and all that sort of stuff, dedicated drag car, sure, you're going to upgrade everything. But being a manual, and I prefer roll racing to drag racing, I will drag race when I get the slipper clutch, but right now it's just not worth it. You know, every time I've raced, I've literally blown up a factory T56. That's the last time I went to Heathcote. But the 2 times before that at Calder, it was just clutches, and so I gave the whole drag. And the car's not set up for it, you know, it's coilovers. Even though it rides quite nice, you can see it takes the bumps really, really well. It's not stiff. It's been properly set up, hence the camber on the front, if you didn't notice, but it's all, I plan to do a lot more street sort of circuit stuff.
I was going to say, this car would probably do well with some good tyres on a bit of a, you know,
well, I've got them already. The hand-cooked Ventus C3s or whatever they are on 18-inch wheels. So I've got a full factory set of VY SS wheels that I'll put those tyres on.
Speaking of engineering, mate, I couldn't help notice your wheels as you rolled on in.
Bit of a passion project. Took me 3 years actually. So there's a bit of a backstory to that. I've gone through, you know, a lot of people that know me know I love my wheels, so I've had quite a few different sets over the journey. But I couldn't settle on a particular set. You know, these days it's very common for all the HSV style wheels to be remade, and a lot of them do look really good. It was a passion project. You know, I had a lot of inspiration from, if you remember the green VY SSX concept car, the one that had the Tirana style hatchback. That car basically had a 21-inch version of this wheel. So ever since I saw that car, it's been in my head to do a remake or a redesign.
So essentially these are a larger version of what came on this
Correct.
particular
So
model?
this is a factory SS style wheel. So what I did is I took an 18-inch wheel, had that 3D laser scanned, CAD modeled, and then redesigned into a 20-inch. But that process took about 3 years. There's a lot of detail in it.
How wide are these?
These are 20 by 8.5 all round, plus 43 offset. So it's essentially the same dimensionally as all of your common HSV remakes or even your Yearbuds. But I did that on purpose because fitment-wise, I know that there's no rubbing provided you've got the right size tyre and period correct. I mean, to me, the way I approached it was, if Holden was ever going to do this, and let's face it, off camera we spoke about Holden HSV wheels from the factory were a very, very good design, some of the best in my opinion. I took that into account. I'm thinking, if Holden was to do this, how would Holden do it? And this is essentially what I came up with. So again, took the time, but definitely worth it. And now once people saw this car with the wheels on it, car shows, online, social media stuff, everybody's asking me about it. Where did you get those? And I'm like, no, well, I did it. It's been a long process.
You bought them off eBay?
Well, actually, funny you say that. So I am going to be making these. So these are a forged aluminum version, but I've just done the final sign off on the cast version. So I will be selling those.
You just touched on that these are actually going to be available to the public?
Correct.
Yep, and this is a cast version. Is there much of a weight difference between?
Good question. I haven't actually weighed them, but now that you've said that, I will. So unfortunately right now this is obviously a bare wheel. This wheel has the tyre. I could still weigh them, but obviously forged aluminum, it's aluminium. Obviously a lot more lightweight, a lot stronger. In saying that though, these have been fully engineered, they've been impact tested, JWL, VIA standards, 690 kgs a corner, so strong wheel.
Well, anyone knows anything about wheels, and in terms of keeping the price point down.
And that's the main reason.
That's the main reason really why you'd go with a cast.
Correct. So these obviously, CNC forged, quite expensive, but worth it considering they are the first set. I've got the only ones.
But obviously this is a car you're not going to sell.
I'll keep this car forever. They're rare to find clean ones these days.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys, it seems to be the flavour of the month, like VY, VZ, especially Club Sport R8s, everybody's buying them up, and the prices, ever since Holden closing, the COVID tax, let's face it, the money's ridiculous. So, to me, this car's worth a lot more than what you would sell it for.
I've noticed you've got the bigger brakes there to fill them out, because obviously this is the main problem. You put a huge wheel on a car and...
Correct, you got to fill it. So I actually had those brakes before the wheels. So it's a minimum 18-inch wheel to fit over these brakes. So what I've got is actually a set of Hero drag radials on factory 18-inch wheels that I'm planning to run on the back, because these licorice strips, you don't get traction. Right now I drive around on 10 PSI, so I call that maybe 500 kilowatts at the hubs. But I do have a boost scramble. So that'll be, first, second gear, 10 pounds, third gear onwards, hit the button. Haltech would be awesome, Fuel Tech, all of those where it's all included in the ECU. Right now, I'm in that stage of just all the various modules, but it works.
What size is the disc then?
So these brakes, as we were talking about before, they're actually the PBR, what's what they call the M series. So all the rotors all round are 355mm, offers Z06 Corvette, that's how they start life. So then you have an adapter bracket the PBR makes to make them fit VT to VZ.
Okay.
But the front calipers are 6 piston, and the rears are 4s, but they're actually individual pad per piston. So there's 12 pads in the front.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, so pretty cool, mainly for heat dissipation.
And we see a lot of LSs in very different, forms, like this behind us, especially turbo. Some guys put a big turbo up the top, others have them in the bottom. This is what you'd refer to as a mid-mount?
Yes, correct, because it actually sits in line with the steering rack, so just above the sump. So it's still gravity fed. There's no oil scavenge on this car. And again, remembering sort of 12 years ago is when this car was first built in this configuration, turbocharged I mean, that there was a lot of issues with oil pumps failing. So all of the low mount kits, while it's a great idea because it removes all the heat in the engine bay, which is a big issue on single turbo cars, heat rises. So if you've got a big single turbo at the top, heat's got nowhere to go. Whereas now, at least the heat has somewhere to go. Yes, it still rises, but where they're mounted, you do get fresh air off the road. That's why they get a little bit dirty. So I just at the time made the call. I didn't want to have any oil scavenge failures.
So this is the only setup you've ever run?
Correct.
You've never run, was this, what manifolds on that?
So this kit started life as a horsepower factory kit from many years ago. But again, it was internally wastegated. So then during that rebuild 4 or 5 years ago, we essentially added another piece of tube off the back of, so they're a log design. There's nothing fancy about it at all. So again, considering the power that it made with such a simple design, it's pretty awesome. So we did the conversion of external wastegate, but all the piping has been changed around a little bit over the journey. Unfortunately, the issue with twins is just packaging.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can see that there's intercooler pipes everywhere, but I think it's actually been done quite neat. While it looks messy, it's organised mess. You know, there is a little bit of, you know, ask Azza who put it together. There's a lot of ways in which you need to work on this car. It's not as simple as, you know, for example, this engine, everything stays on the engine. You've got to drop everything out from underneath. So the turbos stay on, but it's actually not that big of a deal, to be honest. Once you've done it a few times, it's no different to anything. You know the process, so it's fairly simple.
Oh, so when you assembled it, you actually dropped the engine out the bottom, did you?
Correct.
And
yep.
Put everything
on.
on.
Yeah, so put the car up on the hoist, have your table ready to go, essentially drop the entire motor, turbos, gearbox, everything, K-frame included, straight out. If you have a good look down there, you'll see that once they're in there, you're not getting back in there. There's no access. That's the only issue with the
If you've got some sort of oil leak, it's a little bit of a pain.
Touch wood, don't have that issue, but yes, it would be.
Yeah.
When you're starting to push, you know, sort of above that 400 kilowatt barrier, the engine has to breathe. So a lot of your oil leaks actually come from crankcase pressure, where it just can't escape. So once you have a proper breather system, you know, dash 10s with a big catch can, you actually won't have leaks.
So you've just got yours venting down here?
Yeah, correct. So what I did there is I got 2 factory rocker covers with the ICT billet coil mounts, because I reckon they look pretty neat. But then 2 driver sides, so it's actually got the oil filler neck, and then a fitting which goes basically straight to the catch can.
Oh, I see.
And blocked the valley plate. So it's got like a Corvette valley plate. We've still got the knock sensors in there, but it just removes the PCV valve. So all the ventilation here is done through the rocker covers.
You've got a bit of a bimodal type setup.
Yeah, correct. So it runs a full exhaust system that was extracted, twin 3-inch, custom made, hand built. But I do have...
So now you can hear it.
I do have party mode. So basically straight off the dump pipes of the turbos. So
yeah, you can hear them spin
now
up
you
and
can
down,
hear turbo whistles. So that's, yeah, when I'm gonna push it and I want to have a bit of fun, roll racing, etc. Colder when I get there.
Do they gradually close and open, do they?
Yeah, correct. So they're a quick time performance from the US valve. So I've got one on each side. I do plan to merge them back into like a single 4-inch dump, just because I find age-old argument with H pipes and X pipes, what sounds nicer. I prefer X pipes. I think it's a cleaner note. So the dump valves right now, because they're straight off each turbo, it's a bit of a sort of 253 clapped out kind of noise, you know, like a boat motor in the Murray.
Hey, I thought Raptors don't tow anything, man. Look at that.
Jet ski,
yep. Towing a jet ski.
Yeah, see, that's cool.
That's in its element right there.
He's got the grey Raptor with the grey jet ski. That's I like that sort of stuff.
It's full race car mode.
All the whistles. This car doesn't have screamer pipes. I don't feel there's a need, because if I ever want noises, I just open the valves, and now you can hear all the noises, you know? And then when you want to cruise, you just cruise.
How do you find going from the twin turbo manual to a supercharged auto?
question.
Actually, I really like these setups.
I do.
Personally. I feel they're very, very drivable.
Correct, they are, and it purely comes down to driver preference. So if you like just that bit of lag, but then the rush of power,
Yeah, the torque rush.
which does not stop.
Yeah.
Like once it's on,
Yeah.
it just keeps going. Whereas, you know, the blower, especially in an automatic, it's instant, but then it sort of does taper off.
It does, yeah.
So it's purely driver preference. You know, how do you like your power delivery, really?
This is all basically stock, isn't it? Behind the
yeah,
engine.
correct.
Stock
Correct.
converter.
Stock bottom end 5.7, stock 4L60 and converter, stock diff, just 346 gears. So 390 kilowatts at the hubs. I think it was about 13 pounds. So obviously the factory cylinder head is cathedral, blower is square port. So the billet sandwich plates, 10, 12 mil thick, which is the CNC machine to convert the head.
Now we've just switched cars because these cars do look very similar. But in a way from the outside, you'd swear this one is more modified than that one. Just for the fact that you can see a blower hanging
Yeah, just by the
on it.
cutout on the bonnet, exactly. Yeah, look, nothing special. a lot of the time people don't actually realise until they notice it on the bonnet sticking out, and that's the one thing I've liked about it the most. It's not too in your face. I don't actually want the attention, to be honest, but the fact that it is what it is, I'm pretty happy. I do have some decent plans for it though. I'm actually planning on taking the supercharger off. I always wanted a turbo car, and manual's probably one of those as well that I wanted, but I'm happy with what I've been given. But
so you're going to put a manual in it?
Yeah, I've actually got a T56 ready to go. I won't make as much power as Jarrod did, obviously, but I'll be happy enough to have a third pedal. I'd rather have something I can enjoy, and I've got an automatic for a daily, so I'd prefer to have a manual just to cruise around on the weekends. Like, I can justify it.
You build the car you want, not what someone else wants.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I've always had a goal in mind to have a manual boosted LS, and I'm 2/3 of the way there, but I'll probably change it around.
Are you going to do similar to his, like a mid-mount kit, or?
Yeah, well, funnily enough, anyone that actually knows me realises I'm just a little version of him, but conveniently we actually found a turbo kit for sale that was based off an MPW package. Look, it came up for a really good price. It actually is a low mount, so it's going to sit even further down from what his does. So I will need a scavenge pump set up. For what it is compared to what you can probably get for the supercharger, or at least put that on something else, it was worth it.
How has this been going, the stock 4L60?
Honestly, I cannot fault it, and I have to give credit to my brother. Like the tune in it itself, I don't push it hard. I don't want to, obviously, knowing it's a factory 4L60, but second to third gear, I've got absolutely no problem.
The beauty about a blower is you can just leave the converter standard because it makes so much, it makes boost, you know, off as soon as you tip the throttle.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. Like, even the way that my brother's tuned in the traction control as well, like it won't chalk if I go to big-footed anyway. The best part about it is knowing that I can leave it in gear and it'll just do its thing. And you wouldn't believe that it's not built or it's still got a factory drivetrain. Like, the auto is standard, as we said, the converter's standard, drive shaft's a factory, tail shaft I haven't touched. Diff's got a 346 LSD in it, so it's nothing special.
So it's pretty much all stock. You've just banged a blower on it.
Yeah,
and it puts out close to 400 kilowatts.
Yeah,
that's
awesome. On 98, which is awesome for reliability in terms of just being able to go to any servo.
A great way you can support Full Boost is to purchase some of our merch. We've got many different styles on offer, so what are you waiting for? Grab one today at shop.fullboost.com.au.
So when I first met you, Jarrod, you were quite close with the guys at APS, yeah?
Yeah, correct. Lewis is a very good friend of mine. Oh, geez, I've known him for over 15 years now, but when I first bought this car, well, actually no, a few years after I bought the car, I got into tuning myself. I bought EFI Live. A lot of people use HP tuners. It's more of like an Android versus iPhone type deal. I use EFI Live, and what happened was that back in the days of forums, there was a little group that we sort of formed to teach guys how to use the software. I met Lewis in this group, and he basically took me under his wing, showed me the ropes. We've been good friends ever since. When this car was first turbocharged, he tuned it. I wasn't confident enough to do something with this kind of power at that time. But you know, it's more of it's a mentorship, right? So you can imagine being in school, and you know, if the teacher just gives you the answers, you're not learning anything because you don't actually understand why you've gotten that answer. So he would actually quiz me. So he would send me a log, and he would tell me to search through that log and actually identify what is wrong with the car. So I would have to, he was teaching me the right way. He was giving me the tools to learn myself, and that's the best way to do it. So now, yeah, I'm going all right. Yeah, going all right, but I would all to him.